Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick comparison between the Panasonic ZS100 on the right and the Sony HX90V on the left. Now, these are two different yet similar cameras because both are zoom, point-and-shoot travel cameras, in my opinion. Of course, the CyberShot, older and less expensive, also a smaller sensor. You're looking at $400 US retail, but of course it can be found for less now. It's been on the market for a while. It does have a fully articulating display for selfies, and that's definitely a nice thing if that's something you plan on shooting. 1080p video on this is great, very good stabilization, but no UHD and a significantly smaller sensor than the 1-inch sensor found in the $700 brand new offering from Panasonic. Now keep in mind, both of these have variable aperture lenses. The Lumix, a Leica lens, the Sony, a Carl Zeiss piece of glass. However, the 1-inch sensor that's inside the Panasonic, I would argue, despite the fact that one is 10 times, the other one 30, really does compensate and offset the difference in literal focal reach that the CyberShot has in its favor. So even though, again, there is a pretty big price gap, $400 retail, $700 retail. Again, remember, the Sony will be on sale soon if it hasn't been already, because I'm sure that you have seen it for less because a new offering is around the corner. Panasonic even makes a mega zoom that is pocketable like the HX90V to compete directly with it that also is 4K capable. I don't have that here to compare. That's why we're looking at these two. And quite frankly, this is a comparison that I've taken on myself, and it's the reason that I'm actually keeping the Panasonic ZS100 is because, in my opinion, even though this has a limitation of only a 10 times optical zoom, 25 to 250, as opposed to the 30 times found in the Sony, again, that sensor makes a big difference in the Panasonic. Also, the UHD video and overall feature set here is, without question, much, much better. And in my opinion, does justify the difference in pricing. In fact, I really wouldn't recommend cameras like this to anyone anymore at this point. Anything that can't capture UHD video, even if you aren't a video enthusiast, at least for me, is not something I want in my bag, pocket, you name wherever you put your camera. So the Lumix definitely has earned a spot in my lineup, despite the fact that I, for the most part, stick with Sony imaging. Sony doesn't have anything like this camera right now. Granted, I do have the RX100 Mark IV, but I also have an underwater enclosure for that. And for low light situations, and basically the range of its lens, it does outperform the Lumix, no question. But again, if we're talking about looking at any other mega zoom pocketable cameras, whether it's from Sony or Panasonic, I highly recommend you look this way and spend the extra money. The only real downsides to the Lumix lie in the actual EVF, because even though it's great that it has one, it's just one of the worst EVFs out there for this sort of money. That's my best way of putting it. It's usable, but not something you would ever want to brag about. It does have a touchscreen. That's why you see fingerprints all over it. Works well. You can also shoot 30 frames per second of 4K video. So stills from 4K video. You can also pull stills from 4K video all on camera. This would traditionally be, post-production work, but you can do that with this camera, which is nice. Those are 8 megapixel stills, by the way. Cropping that 1-inch sensor, that's another great advantage of this camera where, you'll miss shots with the Sony. And the Sony does have a better built-in viewfinder, which I happen to like more. But again, the overall performance of the Panasonic, the video capability, also post-focus feature is something that Sony does not have. Essentially, the Lumix will take 4 shots with different points of focus of whatever you're shooting. So this way, whatever you were trying to get in focus, in case you were to have missed it in a single shot situation, you'll be able to just touch the screen and actually pull up the point of focus you planned on. You can also focus using the touchscreen, something that, even though we've got an articulating display here, which is great, no touchscreen. Ironic, but that's just how Sony rolls. Also, the Panasonic, you're not going to have any pay-for-play applications like you would with anything from Sony, which is nice. So time-lapse is in there for free. You're not going to pay $10 in a marketplace. Using your phone to control it is a nicety that both of these cameras have. No GPS in the Lumix. You do have GPS in the HX90V, something for those of you wondering. as travel cameras traditionally should have, in my opinion. But you can easily pair up the Lumix with your phone using Panasonic's own application, and then it'll basically geotag the files using your mobile device's GPS. So not a perfect solution. I think GPS should have been on board. But again, GPS is one of those things that is really a mixed feature in terms of where it does have priority for most users. So that's why I could see Panasonic foregoing including it in this camera, just like they could have given us a better EVF and even a better display. That is the rear LCD, one that would move would be nice, articulating. But those were the corners they had to cut, as well as build quality, which these are comparable in build quality. They both are predominantly plastic. That's what they had to do in order to get to that $700 price. So basically, the moral or point of this video is that if you are considering a mega zoom camera from any manufacturer right now, I recommend that you go with the Panasonic with its 1-inch sensor and 10 times reach. I think it's a much better compromise. You'll get more out of the cropping. After all, when you shoot 4K video, UHD video, I should say, really, I believe the crop factor is 37 to 370 millimeters. So you're gaining even more. And once you use Panasonic's digital zoom, not literally the digital zoom, but the iZoom feature, at least what I've seen at 720, 700 millimeters cropping again on the sensor, because that's all it's doing when it magnifies the image, something you couldn't do with a smaller sensor without really giving up all the detail. This thing comes close to the FZ1000, Panasonic's 400mm 1-inch sensor option, which is a bridge-style camera. So that's where the Panasonic really has impressed me thoroughly. Whereas with the Sony, you're kind of just throwing, $300-400, depending on where you get it priced, at the spec list rather than the actual output and performance. So even if you don't care about the UHD video, I can tell you right now, you're much more future-proofed here. And when it comes to stills, you'll find that you actually can lean on the ZS100 without having to bring out much larger cameras, in the same way that the Sony RX100 line always gave you basically zero compromise performance from what could fit in your pocket. So the Lumix does pull that off too, just not as well in the range that Sony does in the RX100 line, which is 24 to 70 millimeters with a faster piece of Carl Zeiss glass than the Leica glass that we have here. But again, I really just felt that since I struggled with this decision, I thought it would relate to other users out there who are trying to rely on point-and-shoot cameras, because I do have still a very good justification for using point-and-shoot stuff. Both of these are clearly much better than anything you'll get out of a cell phone, smartphone. Even though a lot of people have turned to smartphones, the 1-inch sensor cameras are bringing back, I think, enthusiasts that have been away for a long time. So it's all a matter of what your personal preference is. Again, size is similar. There's no question the HX90V is smaller. I like the design of having the viewfinder built in better. I like the fully articulating screen. But every other feature, and I'm not even talking about the post-focus or the 30 frame per second 4K still mode, but just the performance of that 1-inch sensor with the focal reach of that variable Leica lens combined with UHD, basically turning this into a video camera, even though you don't get the 5-axis stabilization. It's amazing. It doesn't have other features that other cameras have, but again, at $700, you will be hard-pressed to find something that has everything this Lumix does in a single pocketable form, no less. And that's why I compared it to basically shrinking down the FZ1000, even though, again, it has a little more than half the range. But once you start cropping, let's be realistic about what a 1-inch sensor can really deliver. We're not dealing with micro four thirds, APS-C, or full frame. This is still a point-and-shoot camera that is going to lose detail as you push it. There's no question about that. So again, I felt it was a relevant video because I struggled with this myself. I didn't know whether I wanted to keep the ZS100. I've been waiting for a camera like this to be made. And then I looked over at my HX90V and said, someone who's just interested in the 30 times optical zoom will be glad to pick this up off of me. I'm going to list it. I'm going to sell it because it just doesn't make sense. I'd much rather for the premium, the difference, 300 or 400, depending on what I sell this for, I'll be able to pick up 4K video that does matter to me and a feature set that's much broader and image quality that is superior in every way, shape, and form. Even though I'm going to give away, 20 times of that optical reach, as well as the fully articulating display, which I still have on my RX100 Mark IV, so I can't really complain there, and don't even begin to ask me, how in my mind I've justified that the RX100 Mark IV and this camera can coexist, but I really do believe they can. And if you're really curious as to how and why I would think that, go ahead and leave a comment, and maybe I'll end up shooting a video explaining why I think they're a great pairing. Similarly, I think this camera is a great pairing with the A6300. But that pretty much rounds things out. If you're looking for a mega zoom, look for the larger 1-inch sensor with a 10x zoom. It's going to provide better images, even stretching to the lengths that the HX90V and its counterparts are capable of. And again, even with Sony refreshing that camera with 4K video, I'm at a point where I really wouldn't recommend cameras that don't have at least 1-inch sensors anymore. I think you're kind of throwing your money away. Still better than anything your smartphone's going to produce, still in video alike. But I really believe that Sony set the tone with the RX100 series, and it's become a standard now no matter which manufacturer you favor. And that's why they all have 1-inch sensor cameras now, and at incredible premiums, no less. The Lumix is a bargain, much like the A6300 right now from Sony is a bargain if you want Super 35 and amazing stills without going full frame. But that's pretty much it. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button, and as usual, please subscribe. Later.